Alright. So getting stuck into the thick of things, we've got Kimo as Thor going for that early gold mine. Not worth the gold, it normally would be, but this way he can actually start close gathering. Making sure he gets full use of that early Norse eco, which is usually pretty shitty compared to what the other civs have on option, particularly a civ like the Greeks. Really nice eco, slightly slower pace. All the other civs are a little bit slower pace than the Norse. They make up for it with economic longevity. Norse really a lot of quick options for rushing available to them. Greeks, a lot of flexibility in their play styles. Like you initially just worry about countering to start with, and then from there just sort of work into whatever your, major minor god setup's going to be. So we've got Extreme player as the blue Hades player. Kimo just scouting with that starting Skraeling, as you do after you get your initial house.
Yo.
Both our players just hunting. So in terms of the TCs, these are quite close, the second TC to each player. All these middle TCs will be a bit easier to try and contest, and I think, like I said, the Norse player is usually going to be the one looking to start forward building and trying to deny access to the easier middle TC for the other player to get on first, and then they can always look at falling back onto their own from there.
Skipan?
So both our players have taken hunting dogs, but Kimo's also taken pig sticker, so this actually means you get both improved gather rate like hunting dogs, but it actually increases the damage your vills do against huntables. Not so important against like caribou and such, they're not going to fight back, but really useful against things like aurochs and wolves, things like that. The food sources that do snap back, they do bite back. They'll tuck into a burger of your villages if you're not careful. Because I mean, by hunting, I think the Norse player generates in a little bit of favour that way anyway. I mean, ideally they want to start fighting their opponent and getting a few hearses out in the field as their main form of favour generation, because fighting against huntables is pretty slow generation. But I mean, it was enough to fit in pig sticker. Try to get a little bit closer to my desk. I've got the cat in my lap. Don't want to upset him. He's nice and chill now. So Kimo going for his temple. So is Extreme player. So you're not going to see a huge amount of deviation from standard sort of openings here. I mean, players might opt to skip hunting dogs or something if they're going for like a sort of rushy H2 sort of play. But otherwise, they're going to just sit back in hunting dogs and work towards H2, setting up for either aggressive unit play and following up with the town center, or just straight up going with the town center and following up with the units, depending on the civ. It's amazing that Skraeling's not stuck. But I suppose the main thing is just to really prevent the majority of attack onto the tower, and still actually leaving a path to garrison and repair if needed. Like, I don't think he would have been able to fit out there, so Kimo garrisoning him out. So, Herses, these guys actually do trickle favour for the Norse. The Greeks, got to rely on praying at the temple. So Extreme player, so far, hasn't really done any yet. He's only just starting favour generation as we speak. So to be honest, I'm nowhere near the level of player these guys are, nowhere near the level of experience even. So in terms of who's going to open with what, I really am going to struggle to predict. But I mean, Greeks obviously You can make use of Hippocons for harass, just because they are going to be faster than everything else you can field. But in saying that, the Norse player, they're going to have access to Skrellings for the most part. And then, I mean, if you just mass up Hoplites, they just switch to throwing Axemen. So I guess you just sort of play it by ear and keep scouting. Nice to have the progress bar on, so I can tell if I'm going to be able to cast another game after this one or not. So the Valkyrie coming in for a bit of a harass, but she can't really stick around because Ajax, extreme player, doing a good job at parking him at the gold mine. This will be annoying for the Greek player to deal with because he'll take a bit of damage on these villagers and he'll lose that initial wood line. So the extreme player has the wood to actually get his next settlement, so he's really just camping the villagers here. He's actually been lucky enough to get the monkey relic, so I mean, it may not be the most useful of all because these guys actually aren't really that greatly started, but there we see extreme player. Second town center already. The Greek player on the other hand, I mean the Norse player on the other hand, Kimo, heavy stables opening, heavy barracks opening, so it's sort of a all-in-one for the Norse, the longhouse. It's not just a barracks, but there's also the stables building and the range building this early on for them. Well, the Greek player has to try and figure out which production facility he needs to get first. So raid coming in here for Kimo. So extreme player's gonna have to try and get these villagers out of here. He doesn't have anything to really defend with other than this little comp up here, which was guarding that town center being constructed. So all in all, only a Vil goes down. An extreme player is continuing to wall up. Wouldn't really even say turtling up, he's just, you know, protecting his gatherers for the most part. Apologies guys, I'm going to have to go and let the cat out. Alright, so kicking back off where we left off. We've got basically just raiding cavalry spam here, I guess, just to try and bait out Toxotes opening from the Greeks and delay the heroic age. Yeah, so double range being... Actually, sorry, I was going to say bait out something other than the ranges to start with. And try and force the Greek player to actually sit in classical longer than needs be. Saying that, I don't think the Norse player wants to spend all that time in classical age if you can get to heroic. So the raiding cabs, they for now have done their job. They've forced the garrison and got a couple of villages. But I mean, there's two town centre here. The extreme player to the one of Kimo. He's getting his second now, it's just about to finish up. But bearing in mind, Kimo's well up on pop, but not up in terms of eco pop, so extreme player with, what was that? 1922. Oh, Kimo's actually on 27, 28. Oh, we got builders here for the Greek player.
protecting me.
So actually fairly even in terms of the bill count at the moment. And I mean, Kimo's caught up in town centers, is actually going to be able to sneak in a third one here. So he's actually only messed up so much, and keeping the Valkyrie alive has been really great for him. You know, sort of sending in the raiders first to tank the raiding cavalry. Now she can heal all them up. Really versatile use of the myth unit. And I mean, I think if you get two, can they heal each other? Yeah, they can heal other allied units, so surely they can heal each other like priests. So I mean, you'd think this would be a tough comp for the Greek to be fielding into a mostly raiding cavalry comp. But bearing in mind the Norse player is investing in that third town centre. And hasn't started Heroic Age yet. Can't quite afford to get there, he's mostly just getting accustomed to having two town centers. And he's going to get used to having three, because I mean it is an uptick in your expenses. Like, unlike your production facilities, if you've got different types of them, you aren't necessarily just going to stop production on them. I mean, Norse is a bad example because they're all just going to be spamming units out of one facility this early on. But Greeks or something, like say if Extreme Player was going for two Rangers and Iraqs, might not necessarily choose to continuously pump out units out of everything, sort of depending on what he might need in order to defend. So Kimo now on 3 town centers, so he's actually going to be well up in terms of his Vil production now. He's going to be able to make it out of here, I think, without really taking any losses, because Extreme Player's not going to want to fight far from his base with a comp like this. These Toxotes, they're a great generalist archer, and probably the best other than chariots, but raiding cavalry are really designed to actually try and beat them, especially considering they've got their medium upgrade. Haven't had the Toxotes upgrade yet. So Kimo just trying to prevent any sort of walling off in here, and maybe catch any villagers trying to sneak out to get on this gold mine or this hunt if Extreme Player wishes to go for it. But in the meanwhile, he's just continuing to wall up around this third town center of his and just deny Kimo the opportunity of stealing it off him terribly easily. But here we go, this is where I guess having the active raiding unit ball out in the map just works in your favor, because not only can you do your initial damage, you can really delay securing additional resources and wall-offs and things like that. This is something I don't see enough players do. It's actually deleting the segments of wall that are unbuilt to reclaim the gold. And I mean, in the other games, people are even worse at it because it's resources other than gold. It's usually stone or wood. So they just get slack as fuck with deleting walls. Like, that's pretty good. That's the only piece that he forgot to delete. I mean, Kimo's going to finish this, but that's worth like 3 gold. No biggie. But now, transition to throwing axemen. These guys, an anti-infantry unit, so sort of preemptive to try and pick off hoplites that Extreme Player might look at transitioning into in order to try and beat the raiders out. They do lose out against Toxotes, but fairly narrowly so. These guys, good against infantry, but being ranged, you know, they are going to be better than most other infantry in that situation, because they're a ranged unit that deals melee damage, so they just get to sit back a little bit further. Don't have to dive on the Toxotes as such, can chip into and contribute to fights where there's already raiders on the Tox. Extreme Player, yeah, is going to look at adding hoplites from here. This is really interesting how he's walled this off to keep getting. I suppose it protects the farmers, which is the main thing, because this wood's not going to last forever. There is still quite a good bit there. So Kimo's going to be able to snipe a couple of houses pretty much for free, because Extreme Player is not looking to send any units to try and defend this yet, but think he's probably trying to minimise his Vil losses in the meantime as well. He really probably needs to get that villager preparing that military academy here. Stream players are totaling up really quite well here. Secured that third town centre. Now got a good wall off on this side. He's going to bring the army back to the centre of his base. He's overbanking a little bit of gold here. Perhaps he's looking to snare quite a few upgrades, as well as throw down a fort once he ages up. But bearing in mind, Kimo's already snuck in Heroic Age behind this, and is even getting his market to try and take a fairly early Mythic. He's doing well to keep this pressure on Extreme Player at the moment, who's still stuck in the Classical Age. I was going to say Feudal Age, and then I realised which game I'm casting. So the investment in all the walls, and I mean having as much army as he has, even though he's not looking to take fights, has sort of ended up costing him in a sense. Because I mean you can sort of go balls to the wall, just super macro heavy I suppose, considering he hasn't really been stuck around for a fight at all against Kimo. He really just, you know, expanded across his town centres and got more production at walls. So this is not great for Kimo. He's not paying a lot of attention here. He's going to lose a couple of these raiders for free basically. Now he's realised. Going to pull back. Only really losing 3 raiders there, so that's nothing huge. So Extreme Player is getting his Heroic Age now at the moment, and he's starting to try and wall off some more, but he's still got this little open passage here that Kimo initially denied, which could come back to haunt him if Kimo manages to fort up here. And that's one of his gold mines going to Kimo, really. But these players are going to be looking to control the gold for the most part. Just overall, just slowly work their way towards each other's main bases. So we've got heavy raiders now. And we've got a Heroic Age, but Kimo's already got Mythic on the way, so he's just going to basically sit back and delay until he gets it from here, I think. It's been a very, very passive game. And Kimo's just raided a little bit. All those raiders being turned into little piggies. Extreme Player can look at making a bit of a push. He hasn't got any siege units as such. He doesn't have any fortresses of his own yet. And now Kimo going to Mythic. He has actually taken the Ragnarok option. I mean, having these monkeys is quite nice, just because they're just tanking a couple extra shots from the hill fort. So ultimately, it might save one of these Toxotes, but that's a really good snare. Well, really good stun with that frost. Is the Minotaur going to get picked off? I thought he was going to actually freeze the Toxotes, and I was just thinking, oh wow, bit of a missed micro, bit of a missed opportunity. Kimo readying up to try and harass production over this side. A single Toxote is in for the fight of his life. He's low. He's going to get picked off pretty quickly there. So Kimo's doing well to zone Extreme Player's army because he doesn't really have anything to try and tank these Frost Giants too well. He's got a couple of Hypaspis now. I mean, he's got medium upgrades on them and the Tox. While the infantry here isn't all that well upgraded for Kimo, though he did upgrade his raiders quite well. Only to have them get turned into little pigs. Right now, his market eco is really booming. 3 markets producing caravans now on auto produce. Well, Extreme Player, for the time being, is still just sitting in heroic, and he hasn't actually yet thrown down a market. So, for the time being, you know, he's in not a bad spot. But I think Kimo is just really going to get this take an eco curve over him at this point, because he's already mythic. So he'll be pumping out all of the armory techs. Getting his iron weapons now. So Kimo has so little army at the moment, actually. He's already up to 90, 113. Yeah, 113 vills already. So there's very little army here for Kimo. I think he's just basically sort of waiting to just like outboom and outgather his opponent here at the moment. Just rely on the fact that by the time Extreme Player does catch up on sort of endgame army and comp, he's already been outboomed and Kimo can just look at shoving. So it's going to be tough for Extreme Player because there's sort of no easy way to break into Kimo's base with the amount of walls going on here. Like there's a dual layer the whole way along at bare minimum. Kimo could even either finish this or delete it. So he's slowly chipping away. Extreme Player's outlying production, not going to get a huge amount. It's been a pretty passive one. And now, Houston, we have liftoff. Kimo's engaging with his 4 throwing axemen, trying to bait a fight out. I think from there he'll figure out whether or not he wants to start cutting vills. So eventually he's going to have to, right? Like he's up to 116 eco pop at the moment. Not sure if that even counts caravans. Does he have gold gatherers? 13 there. So the army getting wiped out of Kimo's, but it wasn't really an army if you could even call it that. So he's just going to get a couple of Huskarls to defend while he's just smashing out all these upgrades. He's got 3 armories in total, so he's been really smashing out the upgrades in the meantime. Oh, and I suppose with this many workers he can just Ragnarok once he gets such a huge eco advantage over Extreme Player, because right now he's actually up by 2.3k score. It's quite scary for Extreme Player, whose Mythic Age is still half done. And I think once Kimo sees that age up timer kick in, he'll just shove because he'll be thinking, well, now's the best time. Extreme Player still hasn't got quite his ideal caravan number, hasn't quite got all his upgrades, and has to look at investing in them first to sort of make Mythic worth it, which in and of itself is quite an expensive upgrade. Extreme Player's side building here, I don't think this is going to be very successful, considering there's all those walls around it, but Kimo's just going to look at starting to tower up around Extreme Player's base just to further leverage his huge economy and the fact that he's running with so little military, but then later on we'll just be able to really push, I think. So he's squeezed in a ballista now. It looks like he must have cut a little bit of eco now in order to just fit a couple of ballista in. Also chip away at these buildings a little bit quicker, not give Extreme Player the time to really mass everything up. And like I said, here we go. So Extreme Player's age up kicking in, and Kimo 20 seconds later using Ragnarok ability, and now we see he's got 400 pop. All of his workers have been turned into heroes of Ragnarok. He's just going to look at shoving from here. But in the meanwhile, he's got a huge amount in the bank, and he's still going to keep ticking over in terms of gold, considering he's invested so much in caravans. But Extreme Player just has to try and turtle his way through this, because then once the Norse economy effectively, you know, like flatlines, it's hard for them to get back in the game without actually losing enough of this army that they fall to, you know, sub 160 pop, and then you can actually outright win fights against them. But in saying that, it's going to be a bit of an uphill battle from Extreme Player, because he really got out, you know, out-greeted or out-gathered early on, and now, yeah, with the Ragnarok, there's just so many of these guys idle. Like, Kimo could even have a lot of them hitting this fortified wall on the side here. But I think he might have enough, because this is going to be a scary thing to hold out for. Extreme Player trying to still wall up several layers deep on his main base here, but this third town center, it's not going to be long for this world, considering, you know, there's only the one layer left of full wall there. It's a really nice heal up from, really nice restoration god power, which, yeah, heals everything up through the whole time, and just heals it up by that much. It's almost impossible to take units down. Achilles out as well, just to deal a bit more damage and try and tank. It just doesn't seem to be enough here from the Greek army to hold out at the moment. The Kimo, his population has really dropped from 400 on the dot to now under 240. So has Extreme Player survived the brunt of it, considering he's only 2.5k score. I say only, considering that lead was a little bit bigger than that a couple of minutes ago. Kimo harassing in the base of Extreme Player, going to make it hard for him to gather all that well, and he's going to need to split off some army from here to try and defend, which means it leaves these guys a little bit more vulnerable. And so transition to Gastra's not a bad idea, because this isn't so great. Having so many idle Gastras when if all 5 were taking down this wall, this gate, it'd be down pretty quickly. I don't think there's any other ranged unit in the game that deals 14 damage a shot against structures like the Gastras do. They fight any faster, they would be an outright siege unit. But yeah, they are a great pseudo siege. They do outrange quite a lot of stuff in the game. This hero of Ragnarok attacking these vills. This isn't great for Extreme Player, because he's microed the vills onto one of the heroes of Ragnarok, but not all of them. And now this one's going to chip away at the rest of these guys, and these ones aren't even gathering. It's not great for Extreme Player, and he is holding out still, but Kimo has so much in the bank, he doesn't even necessarily have to invest in economy the moment he throws away the Ragnarok, the heroes of Ragnarok, because now he's got just enough to keep building, and he's adding Jarl, Fire Giant, so very good comp for trying to siege and snipe vills at the same time, and also take a good fight that's really hard to compositionally defend against. So Extreme Player now, he's only 1800 score behind now, so he can see the light at the end of the tunnel, but Kimo is just towering up so heavily, creeping forward here. It's going to make it impossible to hold on to this third town center. And then from there he can look at trying to deny a full-length market line and really make his opponent sweat. Extreme Player, what's he got in the bank at the moment? Not a lot. He's spending all of his last resources to maintain his army. He really needs to probably delete all these unbuilt ranges he's got. Hasn't really got much in the way of unbuilt walls, which is good. But this is a pretty rough frost here, although I don't know why Kimo would focus down the units, considering they've got so much armor to defend against all this. Wouldn't you be better off just focusing down the buildings once you've frosted an army like that? Or focusing down the non-frosted units? But either way, Kimo's going to be able to get a lot of kills for free here. So that hero going down. Really costly for our Hades player because the Medusa head in Jason's hand freezes the fire giants as part of his unique skill. Ajax falling there, and now it's going to get tough for Extreme Player. He's going to have to try and push somewhere. He's pulled the rest of the Gastras he had here up into the fight while he's got one still chipping away at that wall of Kimo's, but it's going to take forever and a day to cut through that without multiple going for it. And now Extreme Player going to add some Petroboli. What's the plural of them? Try and deal with the towers of Kimo's Norse. Oh, more idle Gastras again. These walls are so low. Just focus fire, guys. And it could really at least divert a bit of Kimo's attention. And, you know, you could actually get these extended ranges built or notice and delete them. So another upgrade kicking in here for these watchtowers. I think so. They look cool with that little bit of moss all growing around the base of them. Bloody sick. Look fully sick, eh, bro? But now, Extreme Player's score gap to Kimo is further widening, and Kimo is actually gonna unlock the secrets of the Titans. He's getting his Titan Gate. He's gonna slowly start working towards that with only a handful and the 5 of his Ulsarks at the moment, because he's wanting to continue the push pressure. He doesn't want to sacrifice too much pop on that. And the meanwhile, he has actually transitioned into getting a bit more of an eco again. So he's back up to 30 vils. Not quite at the, you know, the 100 plus that we saw before he had the Ragnarok, but he's got enough to at least sustain this push. I think he might have even cut a handful of caravans just to fit a mix of more vils and more ballista in, because he's got a lot of pop tied up in ballista fire giant at the moment. Neither unit particularly cheap on pop. Meanwhile, Extreme Player, his comp, he's largely relying on shades from all the infantry he's just throwing in and have die. But in a position like this, what else can he do? He just needs to probably try and side build. Yeah, with some Gastras over here, it's actually not a bad spot, because I mean, Kimo's nearly chopped through this little gap here. And I mean, you might even be able to hit the town center from there anyway. Oh, and this is good. Extreme Player actually is going to stick with building a forward range here, but he's going to cancel the other one. Well, he's actually going to have it deleted, because he's going to realize it's under the wall. So forward's coming up, and another forward tower just to secure this settlement for good, because if Kimo can pinch this from here, he just gets so far ahead in terms of pop, and then Extreme Player will just collapse from here, because with an exposed market line, with this fort going down, and a pop discrepancy, it just becomes too much to handle for even the best of players. He has done well to maintain the defense, at least hold out against the initial Ragnarok push. More military academies coming up. And I mean, if he was Poseidon, he'd have so many militia from all the dead buildings. He might actually be able to turn this one around. Ooh, a couple more idle Gastras when these guys could probably be taking pot shots at something. These Gastras, ooh, they really found a good spot there, but it's too late for Extreme Player. GG, Kimo takes gain of 1 in the series. Victory is mine, hey? Well, I guess it is, getting to cast these sorts of games.